Once again, this is Nuance, and I am Mike Scala, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop artist in the chair of BLM Tokyo. What is going on, Jay?
Oh man, doing all right. It was a warm day today. Got out, did some walking. It was about time. So yeah, how about yourself?
Doing well. Very busy. I know I say that sometimes, but it's a good problem to have. I knew going into the week that it would be a busy week, and then lo and behold, more calls came in that I wasn't expecting. And now it's an even busier week. But that's how it goes sometimes when you're in solo practice, right? Sometimes you have weeks that are insanely busy and other weeks where you have nothing to do. So this is one of those insanely busy weeks.
Wow. Maybe just take a time for a breath.
Yeah, I haven't been out today. Maybe I should at some point just to get some fresh air.
Yeah, definitely gotta do that.
Speaking of busy, we did have a guest scheduled who is also very busy because he happens to do taxes. And this, as we know, is tax season. In fact, I prepared my taxes last night, and not with him, but with someone else. He himself is doing taxes. And so I don't know if he's going to make it on, but I gave him the link. So if he has some time, I'm sure he'll be joining us. If not, we'll have to reschedule. But there it is. I hope you do your taxes soon and you don't owe too much, Jay.
I've yet to do mine, and I usually don't wait this late. By now, I've already done it usually, but yeah, I haven't done it. I need to get on that. I definitely do, and I usually end up owing, and that sucks.
Yeah. You see, it's tricky for me because my income will vary year by year, as it's normal when you're working for yourself, you're self-employed. So it's hard to plan for that, right? It's hard to know or approximate how much you're going to make in a given year to say, I'm going to send in this much in taxes quarterly or whatever. Because, what if you're not making that much? What if you're making too much? Whatever it is. Like, it's just there's so much variance there in my practice, especially, that I was never able to really get on that schedule. My accountant advised me not to unless I knew or had a better idea. Because, for example, a couple of years ago, I was running for office. I really didn't bring in much income. So it wouldn't be good for me to be sending all this money to the government if I wasn't earning that much,
Absolutely. And even though I live overseas, I still have to file. Even though my wages over there are paid to the Japanese government, but I still have to file to the U.S. government for, say, this is how much I made over here. I don't have to pay taxes on that, but I do have other things here in the States, some e-commerce business that brings some income. And so I have to file taxes on, I have to report that income and pay taxes on that. So,
yeah, things get a little trickier. I also had an issue where some of the income that I made last year was already taxed because I worked with a legal services company for the state of Georgia. And so they took money out of those paychecks, and then a lot of the money that I made wasn't taxed yet. So you have to separate those out and kind of figure out how much now you owe on balance.
Right. Yeah. Do you technically have to file in Georgia at that point?
No, I was working in New York, and the company that employed me was in New York. It was just they were just a client.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taxes suck. Sucks. It doesn't have to be this complicated. It's overly complicated. Shouldn't be so, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. And when people get their refund, they're happy about that. I've gotten that refund a few times, not as much since I've been in private practice for myself.
Yeah, I haven't seen a refund in years. So when it was primarily the only income I had was when I was in the States and it was W-2 based income only, then yeah, I got small refunds. But after getting money through like the e-commerce store that I run and set up, then yeah, I always had to pay out.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that tax money is being put to good use. We'll talk about whether one such use is robot police dogs, which apparently that comes out of the civil forfeiture budget. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But I actually wanted to start off by talking about TikTok, of all things.
Yeah.
I created a TikTok account, I guess a little while ago, but I first posted, my first TikTok video went up a couple of days ago. And I know in the chat, people are going to be saying China, I'm giving up all my data to China. We'll get into that in the hearing and everything else, right? But I kind of struggled with this idea of if I'm going to be in public service and do my political stuff, do my legal stuff, and also put out some music, how do I want my social media to look, right? And I'm doing something that's a little unprecedented, I guess. Like I think about The Rock, for example. Okay, sometimes he does wrestling, sometimes he does movies, but it's all still entertainment, right? It might be a little bit odd for me to have a whole bunch of music videos in the mix with my political stuff. I don't know if that's going to confuse people. At the same time, I want to showcase every aspect of myself, and I don't want it to look like I'm trying to segregate myself, like I have a different persona or something. I'm trying to show that it's cool to do a lot of different things. And so I don't want it to be too separated, but I understand the need to have kind of different spaces where people can go depending on what they're looking for at the time. So it's one of those things I kind of struggled with, but I thought that TikTok could be a good platform to put out some of my more musical videos, not just my music, but maybe behind the scenes things, working on my music, content related to the music. So that there's a little bit of a separation there. And then I can still put it on my Instagram and Facebook stories, but people can see TikTok is kind of like the home for that content. I thought that kind of made sense. I had an issue with Spotify that we talked about where I was trying to get control of my Spotify account so I could start posting and, put music out and controlling the page. And they looked at my social media and they said, basically, you look like a lawyer and a politician, not a rapper. And they didn't believe that it was really me. And so I was like, okay, what do I do? But now if I have a TikTok account that's devoted to the music career, maybe that makes it a little bit more clear.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think it also comes with having varied interests. And we've talked about this before, as far as even when we were making music before we did any other types of things, and we were just doing music. Yeah. It's like, we don't stick to one topic because we don't think on only one topic, right?
Yeah.
And so, some things in your feed, you've got commentary that you want to make, or you've got music stuff you want to put out, or maybe even you want to do some funny stuff. Like
right.
It's hard to categorize it like that. Like what do I put this as a niche on my account? Like it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it is a niche, which is really cool because, for example, my TikTok is at rapping lawyer, right? And that is a niche. That's a cool thing that people can like, oh, look, he's the rapping lawyer. And it could be like a way to generate attention for yourself and make it cool because you're taking two things that people don't usually put together and putting them together. And that's kind of creating a unique space in the market that you can kind of corner. So that's dope. But it's still kind of hard to put it all into action in a way that makes sense. Because I don't want to confuse people. And I don't want people going to my page looking for my political stances to see all music stuff either. Like I want it to have some kind of separation when people know what they're looking at.
Yeah. And, I actually meant to bring up TikTok as far as political stuff a few weeks ago. And I remember I sent you a link to a TikTok video of, what is it? Congressman Jeff Jackson from North Carolina, Democrat. And he was using his TikTok to speak directly to the people, right? So when the bank stuff was happening, he put up a TikTok video and he said, look, this is what happened last night. And this is how we're talking about that it's going to be handled. This is what's being discussed. And he was just being very upfront and very, very clear about it on his video. And I thought that was pretty awesome. To have that transparency and clarity that he was putting out. And it seems to be what he uses his TikTok for. And he's got like 1.6 million followers.
Right.
Especially for a politician, having that type of following is amazing. It's a good well to dip into.
Sure.
You're going to get a message across when you go to fundraising, when you talk about whatever the issues are. And so he was using it to be transparent and upfront and frank with people. So I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's, I guess, less confusing now for me because Facebook used to be the main medium. Now you're seeing people move away from Facebook, especially younger people. So if you're trying to reach a younger generation, you don't really do Facebook. And that actually helps me now because I can keep my Facebook for the political activity and show the constituents because they tend to still be on Facebook and maybe they skew a little older on average. But if I'm trying to reach a crowd that's more interested in hip hop music, I don't need to even use Facebook anymore for that. I can use TikTok and other platforms.
Right. Yeah. And that's basically what it is. Like I said, Facebook tends to skew a little bit older because a lot of the youth have left it. When their parents came on Facebook, they're like, yeah, okay, we're out of here.
Right. When the parents get on TikTok, then it's time for a new platform.
Yeah, well, they're on TikTok too, but there hasn't been.
Yeah, but it takes a few years, like the Great Migration, right?
Yeah, right. The only one I think that has stayed pretty solid for the young people this whole time is Snapchat. Um, that seems to be sticking around, even though it doesn't seem to be like the mainstream thing. But for kids, like
Right.
it seems to be the thing. Like a lot of people will ask for their, oh, what's your Snap?
What's your Snap? I was going to say that. You hear that a lot. And it's funny because Snapchat is designed to have content that disappears after, 24 hours, I guess. So I can see why kids would like that more, because if they make a mistake, unless someone screenshots it. But I mean, it's something, as a kid, your mind is changing all the time. Like you might say something that you strongly believe now, but by 5 o'clock, you regret saying that, or you forgot saying that, or you're on something else. So I can see them liking the content that doesn't last that long.
Yeah. So I've never, I think I loaded up Snapchat once and didn't really, I don't know. I just felt like, okay, yet another one. And I just,
yeah, I get that feeling too. There should be a word for that. There should be a word for like social media fatigue, where it's just another one I got to keep up with now and grow my followers. And because like you have another kid, right? You got to give attention to it.
Yeah. Do
you have the time for that? Do you have the capacity for that? I know it's tough. Like I think like if we're going to grow Nuance, we need to have an intern or someone who just handles all these different social media networks.
Yeah, I mean, because there's this, it's a lot of work. I mean, I know people give like some of the kids and some of the influencers and whatnot, they give a lot of flack. Okay, it's just social media, but no, it's a lot of work that they put into.
No, absolutely. And I remember back in the MySpace days, I really was able to grow my audience by grinding it out. Before they even had these bots and these different programs you can get to try to get more friends on MySpace, I manually would do it. I would go into hip hop forums, discussion groups and whatnot on MySpace. And I would manually sit there and send friend requests to every person in those groups. And they gave you a limit. I forget what the limit was per day, but I would sit like every night, I would put in those 2 or 3 hours and just go in, add until they stopped me. And that's how I was able to grow a big following on MySpace.
Yeah. I think if I remember, you had like 45,000 or something.
Yeah, I think I had over 50K. Yeah.
I think I was somewhere around 30. It was just like, we were just like trying to push it out. But
yeah. And I didn't really know much about TikTok in practice until I posted the first TikTok video of mine. You can go on there and look at it. And apparently it gained some traction. I don't know. They considered, I guess, a viral video based on the percentage of people who watch it compared to the people that it's shown to.
I mean, how many views did you get?
I think it's like 400 right now. And I think they said that they show it to between 500 and 600, something like that on average. And if it's between 60 and 70%, they call it a viral video and they post it to the top, or they put more of your content out, something like that. Like it moves up the algorithm.
And TikTok kind of changed the way some of the other platforms did their algorithms, because people were doing, like you said, the way the algorithm works is you put your video up and TikTok first shows it to people kind of in your area first, and a certain number, like I said, maybe, I don't know if there's a specific number, 300, 400, 500, whatever it is, they show it. And depending on how many of those either sit and watch the whole thing or how much engagement they get with it, then they show it out to a much larger audience. And depending on how their response is, then it goes to a larger audience. And that's how people are able to end up going viral, even if they have small followings.
Right.
Because the algorithm kind of works with them in that regard.
No, and I like that. And I like that I was getting some new followers just off the one video and some engagement on it. To me, it was better even than Instagram, because on Instagram, I find that my content and my general profile and presence is mostly seen by people I know. Maybe they come over from Facebook or they're on my contacts, but they're people in my circle already, or friends of friends or things like that. But I don't find my engagement to grow organically on Instagram. If I put something up on Instagram, it's going to be seen by people who are already my followers. But on TikTok, it did show it to people who didn't know me, and now they do know me. So that's a good way to expand the audience. Right.
And Instagram has really limited organic reach these past couple of years. If you're posting static pictures, it's pretty much dead as far as organic reach.
But even stories, though.
Even stories have dropped significantly. Reels have dropped significantly.
Yeah.
Like I would post, short 1 minute music videos, and I was doing between 4,000 to 6,000 views on each one of them. Now I'd be lucky if I get it, 800, 900, 400 to 800, 900. So they're really scaling back on what they're helping algorithm wise.
Well, could it also just be the more people are on TikTok now?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing I think TikTok will stay in the short term in the dominant space as long as they keep their algorithm in a place where it helps people gain that organic reach. If they start to fight against people, like Instagram does, because with their Instagram, the idea is like, okay, if we give you this algorithm is going to help you get all this stuff, then you're not going to pay for ads to get a bigger reach. And so that's where they start to limit it. Okay, well, yeah, you only got 500. You want 1,000? Well, we have this ad platform.
Right. But you get that dopamine hit. For me on TikTok, it's like, okay, new people are coming in, not just people who already follow me, but I'm expanding my audience. And that makes it addictive because now I'm like, now I want to post some more stuff to get even a bigger audience. Instagram doesn't give you that sensation.
Yeah. But I don't use TikTok a lot. I probably post like once every week, every 2 weeks or something like that. And it's just more lifestyle stuff or observations.
Right.
Referring to Japan, and then I put music on there as well. It's probably not a specific pinpointed niche.
Yeah.
But I think the way that it works is that it's tied to your phone number or your SIM card. So the area that you have your account started with. So even though I'm in the United States, my TikTok is in Japan TikTok. Right. So the majority of people that are going to see anything that I post is going to be in Japan. And so when I do content, it would make more sense to cater it towards being out in Japan.
Japanese audience.
Unless you start to show the algorithm that you've worked enough or you view only stuff from the United States from this area, then they'll start showing you stuff from that area. But that takes a long time to get around it. But you're still tied to the SIM card from where you're from.
Yeah.
So, like even, like if you go onto your TikTok and you want to use people use the voiceover, the computer voiceover text, right? And then you got people that you type in the words and it'll speak the text.
Mm-hmm.
All of my voiceovers have Japanese accents.
Gotcha.
Because
based on where your phone is from.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I'm also seeing now that music is being made to cater to TikTok because a lot of people discover music on TikTok and TikTok is used for, I guess, music going viral. And that's, it kind of facilitates that whole thing. So people are actually creating the music now with TikTok in mind. It's one of the reasons why songs are getting shorter. There are other reasons as well, but that's one of them. And also I'm seeing things like, you might not even want to have a chorus of the song played 3 times, maybe even just once, because who cares? It's TikTok. They're just going to pick out the best part of the song anyway for their little 30-second video. So It's weird, right? I mean, we used to have, for example, a lot of music was catered to radio in the older days where it would have a long intro and a long outro to give the radio DJ time to talk over it and fade it out and fade it in, give time. Now you're seeing that not even being a thing anymore, right? The songs are just starting and ending. There's no need to have these things like, who needs to have the chorus 3 times? If someone puts it in their video, people will just watch the video over and over again anyway. They'll pick out the best part of the song. So TikTok is really changing even the way music is being made.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. And people are blowing up off it. They're working the way TikTok works, not just with music, but even marketing and comments.
They say it's about having a moment in the song that would be good for a TikTok video, right? Imagine that. You're making a song thinking, what moment can I put, or multiple moments in a song that I could see people using for their content on TikTok. Like as a lyricist now, you got to think that if you want to get that traction on TikTok, I got to have lyrics in here that people are going to want to put behind 1,000 TikTok videos. Right.
And you get a small piece of that too, right? I get small pieces of, I don't know how people are using it or whatever, but I see in my statistics or analytics sheet as far as plays, you get these bits from TikTok. And so you get cents here and there. The more it plays, you get more money you get from it. But if you get something that can go viral like that and people start using it in millions of videos, then, you can get a smaller bit of income.
Sure. And that's kind of a sad state of affairs also when you're talking about having to get into the millions to get a small amount of income.
Yeah. And it's the same, but it's the same with streaming too. Like it's
sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the same thing, but it wasn't like that with sales.
No.
Or even downloads, right? When we were selling our singles for 99 cents, you didn't have to sell millions of singles to make some money.
Right. No, absolutely not. Now, to what is it like? I think it's like 100, depending on Spotify. I think it's something like 150 plays, something like that. It equals like one download or something. It might even be more.
I thought it was more than that. Yeah.
It might even be more than that. Yeah.
I thought it was 1,500.
It could be. And, let me look that up.
I think Nas has a line on his new album, 1,500 plays is one sale.
Yeah, it could be. And the thing is, like, no one's playing the same song 1,500 times to equal the sale, right?
Right.
I don't know where that's at, but
yeah, no, you need a lot of people. That's why you basically have to have a viral moment to be able to make any kind of money.
Yeah. So I guess I just do commentary every now and then. Like, recently I saw you like the recent one that I put up.
Yeah. So yeah, we can talk about that. But I also wanted to talk about New York. Apparently, they quietly banned TikTok from government devices 3 years ago. Now, there are some exceptions. I guess certain governmental agencies are still using TikTok, like you said, to communicate to people, to advertise what they're doing. And so they allow some of it. But generally speaking, they don't allow TikTok to be installed on government issued devices like laptops or cell phones.
Right. And
there's a concern that China is spying, right?
Right. Because in China, TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, is a Chinese company. And in China, China has the right to go through all the records of any company, regardless. There's no, there's nothing to stop them. They can look at anything that they want to. And so that's the fear, right? That they can go through everybody's content and data and personal information and analytics and stuff, that the government itself can do that, and basically tracking or looking at Americans' data.
But now, what kind of data are we talking about here? I mean, I know they can see your activity on TikTok. What beyond that might they have of Americans?
Well, for government workers, right? If you're doing TikTok inside a government building, and, but I think even that would apply, in my opinion, that would apply even if you're doing YouTube or whatever. Why would you be putting that out there publicly? If you're inside the Pentagon in a top secret area or an area that requires certain types of clearance, and you're making a video from there, anyone that's watching, spying, whatever, can look at, okay, well, what's in the back? What's in the background? What can I see? Maybe I can pull some information from that. Or if you're looking at geolocation data, right? Okay, so he did this video from this point. Okay, we can kind of maybe map this area a little bit, right? Using geolocation data.
Map the area in terms of what they see on the video?
Yeah, and they can match things up. Okay, well, this view, this location, right? Stuff like that. I mean,
I just think it's important, though, for us to have this kind of conversation, because there does seem to be a lot of misunderstanding or just ignorance out there when people say, if you use TikTok, China's going to get your data. People don't know what that means. I mean, they might think that means your bank account or your social security number. Like they don't know what can be accessed and what can't.
No, China won't get your bank account, your social security number, unless you put it on there.
Yeah.
Right? And on the flip side, TikTok has said, China is a parent. ByteDance is the parent company, but they're headquartered in Singapore and in the US. So they're implying that China doesn't have access to those records. Mm-hmm. However, I don't think it was definitive one way or another in those hearings or whatnot. It's still kind of slipping by, even though some of the questions he was being grilled on were unfair and very much uninformed. But I can still see there were some points there where he was just like trying to avoid saying certain things. But again, at the same time, some of the questions, some of the issues and concerns are industry-wide, social media-wide, right? Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, if you're in a government facility and you are going live or you're recording video, anyone can look at that video and analyze the surroundings, right? We've seen news stories about how people have been found just from photographs they posted on the internet because people can recognize certain things.
But absolutely. But do you think there's a concern for government workers that if there's TikTok installed on their device, somehow TikTok and somehow China is going to get more than just what they post, or maybe more than just their geolocation, perhaps? Maybe there's a concern that they're somehow going to get records that are on that device outside of TikTok, like access to their emails, for example?
I think some people have raised that question, but that would ultimately depend on the software itself. And, then whoever's approving the software on these app stores, on the Apple App Store, on the Google App Store, should be looking at the code to see if there's some backdoors in that regard that can do that type of thing. And I'm pretty sure on Apple, on the Apple App Store, I don't know much about the Google one, but on the Apple App Store, they list what the app has access to.
Right.
And like I said, New York did it 3 years ago. They banned it from government locations, and they weren't the first. This wasn't. Most places did. I think the Pentagon did like 3 years ago. They banned it from military installations, the Pentagon itself, from government properties, and we weren't the only ones. India had a ban on TikTok. There were places in Europe that restricted areas for TikTok. Even in Japan, there were a couple of politicians that proposed looking into banning TikTok because a lot of places in the world were having these same concerns.
Yeah, and so I wonder if the concern is overblown because it's a Chinese company and people have this idea China is spying on you without even really knowing what that entails or could entail. Is it overblown? Or is it a legitimate concern? Because like you said, some of these concerns could apply to other social media networks, but because TikTok is Chinese, I think we kind of look at it differently.
Right. And that's what it is, because we have this adversarial relationship with China, because China is the big bad, one of the big bads of the moment. So some of it could be overblown. Some of the way they were talking about it was grossly misinformed, especially in the hearings. They were asking questions like, "Oh, can TikTok use my Wi-Fi?" Like, you really have no idea what you're talking about, dude. Like, so it's, some of it can be overblown. Some of it is kind of picking on TikTok because Facebook does the same thing. Instagram is the same thing to some extent. Twitter, depending on what you post on there, Snapchat, all of these can have some of these similar things, except they're not Chinese parent companies. So,
right. And, I think generally speaking, the concerns really are more about aggregate data and patterns than individual users, right? I mean, your average TikTok user, what's so interesting about their data? Maybe they go to school or go to work and come home. Who cares, right? But maybe we're concerned about the trends and if that gives China some intelligence on us that we don't want them to have.
Right. And, but again, if you're doing it on Instagram, it's the same. Instagram, as long as it's public, they can take a look at it. It's just about China collecting this data because they're allowed to look at any corporate records that they wish to, and that's just part of how their government works. And so that's
right.
And I think
that's a distinction, right? Because our government can't just automatically access all of Google's records. I mean, they could subpoena and do different things, but it's in theory, there's a layer of protection there that China doesn't have.
Right. But at the same time, we have a track record. Remember Project Prism from several years back, where the government was getting all of this data from these major companies, from Google, Facebook, and people didn't know, people weren't informed about it, and people were upset. We've had, the Cambridge Analytica type of thing, like all of these things.
Right.
Happened, the U.S. government has done. Right. But they're afraid that the Chinese government's going to do, but it's a foreign government doing with the American data.
Right.
So.
Right. And then there's the Patriot Act also. People are, listening in or
Yeah.
having the ability to listen in on our conversations and get our phone records and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we do have constitutional rights here. We do have ways to push back against it. And like I said, it's really in theory because we do see a lot of times they're subverted. But in China, they don't have any of that even on paper, right? So there really is no barrier to entry.
Right. And another thing to look at as well, like we look in Europe. Europe has some very strict rules and regulations in regards to how people's private data is used in social media. Right. And so some of these companies have to alter their collection policies or whatever if they want to operate in Europe. They're not allowed to store certain data, or they have to let people know up front or whatever it is to be able to operate in Europe and European countries. And so, I mean, it's not unprecedented to be weary of how foreign countries are utilizing data of your citizens. So,
absolutely, it is something to be vigilant of. At the same time, I don't know if I'm going to sound the alarm on TikTok right now. Like, no, because you see people saying this, no one should be on TikTok. I don't know if it's that catastrophic. I think it's something just to be mindful of.
I think, yeah, I mean, what can be scary about it, but it's not specifically TikTok, it's more the industry wide, is things like aggregate data, like you said. Like anything you post, people can be downloading. Let's say, imagine they're downloaded everything on your feeds, and now they've got facial recognition of you, and they can train a very effective facial recognition of you. They can train a very effective voice cloning of you. Anything about your habits and things you're talking about, something you might let slip about where you at, where you're doing, what you've done, or whatever. Like, and they can create this big profile about you and use algorithms to predict your movements, predict what you're going to do, what you're going to buy, what you're going to this and that. And so,
does China care about the average user on TikTok? Do they care about cloning them and making a digital version of them? Are they that interesting? Are they that important to China? Your average TikTok user?
The average TikTok user, maybe not. But let's say, for example, I talked about the congressman that was on here, right? 1 million followers. He's talking very frankly to it. Yeah. Imagine a bad actor in a foreign government. They want to clone his voice and make some phone calls to some people to
right.
Say, hey, this is me. What's this thing we were talking about? Give me some details. And boom, there we go. Secret.
So that concern really is more with people in positions of power or prominence than just your average kid on the street using TikTok.
It's potential. It's potential there. Yeah. I mean, kids won't have, the average kid on TikTok in the public is not going to have access to certain information like that. But, all of these things being out there and with people with bad intentions and with the technology that we have today, especially with AI just booming everywhere.
Right.
It can be very, very scary.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that relates to our police dogs combo that we'll get into.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about that TikTok video that you posted about the graduation ceremony in Japan, right? There was a student who was, half black, half Japanese? And
right. Yeah.
He had his hair in braids?
Right. So Japan has very strict rules and regulations on a lot of things, right? Even in general society, there's some kinds of things that are pretty strict. And so, especially in school, right? You're wearing school uniforms. School uniforms have to be a specific length. Sometimes, and you might find it in Catholic schools in the States, right? The skirt has to be a certain length. It can't be this and that. And even into the point where there have been, some schools have been caught requiring that even their undergarments be strictly white. And what would happen is the students would come to school and it'd be a teacher that would check their underwear to make sure it's not a different color, right? Or make sure your hair, you have to have straight black hair going to school. So what kids would have to do, if they didn't naturally have it, they'd have to dye it or they'd have to straighten it before going to school. And it's this kind of strictness. And so this kid was high school kid. He was going for his graduation. And I didn't know at the time, and it wasn't really reported, but I spoke to a reporter when I was interviewed for a Japanese newspaper about it. Apparently, the school had asked him to cut his hair And he was half black Japanese, so it's not straight black like almost everyone in there. And so he wanted it to look neat. So he talked to his father and he got it in cornrows. So it was very tight, very straight down there. And so he went to school for his graduation. And when he got there, they separated him. They segregated him from the rest of the students. They made him sit up on the second floor. And when his name was called, they told him not to speak. And so this went, hit the news, of course, and people are talking about, discrimination and issues with that. So what happened was we as in BLM Tokyo, linked up with another group called Japan for Black Lives. This is an organization that came out during the George Floyd protests that were looking for helping with solidarity and to educate the Japanese public. And so they wrote a petition that they put up on change.org to talk about to petition the Ministry of Education to ban hair-based discrimination based on like texture and color and this and that, because, not everyone naturally has that. And so they put this petition up on change.org, and within 1 week, there was already 12,000 signatures. And now at this point, it's probably been almost in its second week, and we're at about 27,000 signatures. So it's pretty incredible. And of course, this is the majority of Japanese people. So it's not a bunch of foreigners saying, hey, we're going to push this on you. This is Japanese people saying, we don't want this type of discrimination in our schools. And it wasn't just about this one kid, but he was the latest in this type of strict regulation stuff.
Right.
Example.
It seems to me that Japanese culture really isn't focused on individualism, right? It puts the collectivism above the individualism, right? So they don't want someone to stand out and look different, right? They want everyone to kind of be monolithic to the extent possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been part of the culture. And look, they're 98% similar, right? In Japan. And so that's kind of how it evolved in that way. But things are changing, right? There are more and more either mixed race children being born, or foreigners moving in, or even Japanese people who are Japanese nationals who might not be of that same descent, because there are people there who were born and raised in Japan. They've been there, their family's been there for generations, but their ancestry is Korean, and they came over through the war because either they were brought over during as prisoners or whatever, but they've been there. So they might be a little bit different. Or there's the Ainu people, who are the indigenous people of Japan, and they're not necessarily the same straight black hair. Or the Okinawans, who was an independent nation, and they were slightly different as well. They're a little bit darker. Their hair might be a little bit different. And so this puts an undue burden if everyone has to fit into this certain look.
Right.
And it brings into question, okay, well, who is Japanese? Like, well, they're not Japanese. They were born and raised here.
And what would they do with someone of those other groups that you mentioned? I mean, would they also be subjected to that, having to sit on the second floor and not speak? Or is it just pushing black?
Yeah. So personally, I don't think this was a racist thing. I don't think this was an anti-blackness thing. I think it was one, just kind of a cultural point. I think it was, a rules and regulations thing. I think the discussion that should be raised here is more about how this rule and regulation might not be equitable for everybody in Japan, not just foreigners, not just people that are mixed race, just for everyone in Japan who don't fit this specific mold. And for the future, that it's going to change, because more and more every day, other people are coming into Japan. Japan is going to have to rely on foreigners coming in. They're going to have more and more mixed babies being born, and not everyone's going to fit into that same mold. And so this might be something that they need to discuss right now. And it's funny, is I had a friend of mine who he's an older gentleman. He grew up, he was born and raised, well, he was born in Germany, but he's Japanese. He was raised in Japan. And he's actually, his mother's Chinese, but he was born and grew up in Japan, right? His native language is, or not born in Japan, but his native language is Japanese. And so he actually sent me this as well. And it pained him because it reminded him of what he experienced growing up. Because, his hair is a little bit stiffer than traditional or Japanese expectation. And so some of that, and plus people knowing that his mother was Chinese, there'd be some of that discrimination. And so it's nothing new, but it's like something they're going to have to face even more going forward. So it's good to see that this many people have signed on to this. And then, as far as hair goes, it's not unheard of for people, like if you have that type of hair, it's different, that the school might require that you bring in a certificate that proves or proof that your hair is not straight and black, so that you can get some sort of a leeway or a pass.
Wow. See, as an American who isn't very accustomed to Japanese culture, that sounds shocking, right?
Yeah.
You never see something like that, or at least you would hope not to see something like that in the US. I mean, that would be very offensive if the school came out with some kind of policy like that.
Right. Well, we have that in the States, right? And that's what the Crown Act is all about, right? Where black hair and black hairstyles are regularly discriminated against in schools and even in workplaces. And so that Crown Act is to be like, hey, look, this is, natural hair for different people means different things. And so we should not be making rules and regulations specifying certain things. And I remember when I was working at Sears at one point. I remember I was working at Sears as a sales associate. And at the time I had braids in my hair and I would wear it in a ponytail. And so to keep it neat in a ponytail and the sides were shaved. And I was in there on the trial period. You get the 3-month trial period before you become official employee. And I remember a manager pulled me aside, and it was an older black woman. And she said, I just want to let you know that the other managers here, and she was talking about the white managers, and she was like, they are not happy with your hairstyle. They don't find it whatever to fit. And she said, I just want to let you know, I'm voicing my opposition to them because they let these other white associates go around here wearing their hair long and in ponytails, and now they want to single out someone like us. And so just wanted to let you be aware of what's going on. And so I've experienced that, and then
but that's also the difference, because you can see something like that being about race nakedly, right? If you have people with the same kind of hairstyle, but of different races, one seems to be allowed, one not. What's the difference here? I mean, it makes it more transparent. Whereas what you talked about in Japan, it might not be so obvious that that's the case, because they're saying everyone has to have short black hair, right? Like if something like that happened in the US, people would be like, what the hell? Like there's no way people would stand for that.
But I think we have something similar, like military schools, right? Everyone's got to have short buzz cut, right?
It's the same kind of haircut, but not the same color hair necessarily, right?
Not the same color, but in general, you can't show up with like purple hair, right?
Right.
Like,
right.
If it's your natural hair, they don't make you like, oh, you have to dye it this color. All right. So
right. But that's what I mean, right? Like if you were a black person in the military and you do the buzz cut, you should be good under that policy.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely good. If you're a redhead, if you're blonde, buzz cut. You all have to buzz cut.
Right.
Even though
but in the situation in Japan, it seems like this kid really couldn't have complied with the policy because his hair type didn't match what the requirement was, right?
It would have been difficult. I think he could have cut it short. And I don't know what would have satisfied the requirements, but I think it was that the hairstyle was so different. And to be fair, and I brought this up before, like him and his family could have reached out to the school and said, hey, they knew what the rules and regulations were. They could have said, hey, we know we've asked him to cut his hair, or he wants to put it short, he wants to wear it neat or whatever. He's going to wear this hairstyle. They could have brought that up ahead of time. So like I said, I don't think it's a specific anti-blackness thing. I think it is, it's a cultural point. I think it's a rules issue that fits in with other issues that go with the rules. Like I mentioned about underwear being a certain way, about hair texture and stuff being, they wanting it specifically black and straight. And so, like his might not have been just straight fall, laid down. It could have stuck up. And so in that case, he's got to do a relaxer. He's got to do straightener or something in that regard.
Right. And that puts an extra burden on him.
Absolutely.
And obviously there's a difference between the military style of haircut, which in theory was, I guess, to prevent enemies from grabbing you by the hair, right? And taking control of you. That's why they wanted the short hairstyle. But
part of it, yeah.
There's a difference between that and school, which, and obviously there's a big debate on this. I personally think that individualism and people's uniqueness and creativity, their ability to express themselves, should be embraced in the school setting. That's why I never personally even liked uniforms at schools. So I see no reason why everyone's hairstyle has to be the same at school. That doesn't make any sense to me.
I get that point too, and I can also look at the other side. I wouldn't have wanted uniforms at school. At least I think that, but I also understand a benefit of uniforms at school, right? So for people who have different economic situations, uniforms can be a way to balance everybody out, right? So if how kids come to school, oh, I got the new Jordans, I got the new this and that, right? And so the kids whose family doesn't have that type of money comes in with hand-me-downs from their brother or something, or clothes from whatever. And so the kids and everyone's be like, you didn't get the new stuff. You're not wearing the jacket. Oh, that looks old. But if everyone's wearing a uniform.
Do people say that though? I mean, I believe that it happens. In my experience, it didn't happen. I went to public schools in Queens.
Yeah.
People wore all different things. I don't recall kids being clowned for not having new Jordans. Maybe if you had them, you're like, oh, look at you got the new Jordans. But like people weren't like, you're wearing a poor person's clothes. I've never heard that.
I think it's happened. I didn't have that experience. But think about coming back from Christmas break, right? And that first week back, everyone's showing off all the new clothes that they got. Well, if your family doesn't have that type of money, you might not have gotten a lot.
I also don't recall everyone showing off all the new clothes that they got. It just wasn't the experience that I had. The closest to that was the book bags, right? People used to go in, I think JanSport was really popular in the 90s, and there was a little bit of a premium book bag, because before they came in, people spent like $10 on a very cheap plastic book bag. Then JanSport, people were spending $50 on book bags, right? I remember I had like a $10 cheap little plastic one. It might have said like Monday Night Football on it or something like that. And someone kind of picked on me, but it wasn't a big deal. But he was like, hey, Monday Night Football, how much was that book bag? And, I forget what I said. I said, I don't know. I might have not even known the price that it was. I might have said, maybe this was like $30. Oh, you got ripped off. That's like a $10 book bag, that kind of thing. But I mean, all right.
I mean,
it was mean, but kids are mean, right? I mean,
they are.
Do I think the answer is to make everyone wear the same clothes and have the same book bag from now on? No.
Right. But I mean, I can see some merits of it. Not to say that that's economic is specific in Japan's case, because those school uniforms are insanely expensive. So I don't think that's the case there. There, it's more about uniformity, about everyone looking the same. I mean, to the point where some of it's so inflexible that, boys wear basically a suit, and it's kind of a military style suit, and girls wear that sailor suit uniform where they have like the kind of the suit top and then the skirt, and it's usually some sort of like plaid pattern or whatever, right? And that's a requirement for the uniform, and that's even in winter when there's snow outside. Girls will be outside bare leg because so some places they're not allowed to wear anything over their legs because it's not part of the uniform, freezing to fit into the school rule. And that to me makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
Some of that definitely needs to be.
And don't you think that it stunts people's development? Because children are developing, and they're at a time in their lives when they're starting to find out who they are and realize who they are. And sometimes they're experimenting with who they are. And that's cool too. You go through certain phases. Maybe you think you're into a certain type of fashion, a certain type of music, certain type of hairstyle, whatever it is. You're kind of just learning about yourself, not just about your academic subjects, but you're learning who you are. Don't you feel like if everyone has to be the same, it stunts that development and it doesn't allow kids to experiment with expressing themselves?
It could, but they can also wear whatever they want outside of school. So I mean, I can see, pros and cons of both sides there. So, think Licks in the chat is saying her son went through that in their local public school when he was in grammar and junior high school. I guess with people talking about his shoes. The kids with Jordans would say something about him. Even though they wore uniforms, the kids with Jordans would say something about his shoes. Meanwhile, his feet were too wide for Jordans, so I guess he wouldn't wear it, and kids would put a lot of importance on that.
So, Licks, I mean, I don't really understand that. So the kids with Jordans, is that most of the kids? So it's like they're all kind of wearing the same Jordans? Or it's like, yeah, so it was like half the kids have Jordans, half don't, like, and then half get bullied by the other half. I mean, are the non-Jordan kids bullying the Jordan kids too? Or I don't understand that culture.
Well, you imagine kids that are walking in with it could be kids wearing the Jordans, and like, yeah, they're like, everyone knows the Jordans are like fashionable thing, they're the expensive thing, they're supposed to be the it thing. They come in and just start pointing, mocking other people, like, you don't have them. But
they can be mocked back, though. I mean,
yeah, but
a lot of hip hop style came from prison, right? I mean, this didn't come from people with a lot of money and access. They made things cool that people maybe shunned initially, but they made it cool, right? And then now everyone wants to wear what they had, right? I mean, you could do the same thing. You can create your own trend in the school. Say, we're all going to wear this. We're all going to do it like this. We're all going to wear plain white T-shirts. That became a thing for a while too. That wasn't.
But you got to have people with you to do that, right?
You have leadership qualities. You don't need to have clothes to do it.
You have to have people that are going to do it with you. Like if you're one guy, saying, I'm going to start a trend. Like one person doesn't a trend make, But that incentivizes
you to develop your personality and be expressive, right? If you can show up and be the coolest kid, and you're making everyone laugh, you're telling the best jokes, maybe you're making music, you got the best music in the class, whatever it is. Maybe you don't make music, maybe you listen to music and you're putting kids on to all these new artists that no one even knows. Whatever it is that you're doing to stand out, then you can get people to follow you. And you say, you know what? We don't wear Jordans around here. Nah, Jordans doesn't play it out. We wear this. Yeah, I think it's very easy to say, but very difficult for kids, especially those who are still trying to find themselves. But you're not allowing them to find themselves if they have to be the same. Yeah, I mean, I think that just allows some anxiety to be lifted in some cases. In some cases, it can be stifling because, like you said, people don't get to express what they wear. So yeah, I think there's pros and cons to both of it. It reminds me of everyone have the same house, for example, right? And say, well, if everyone lives in the same house, then people can't talk about I have a better house than you, or you will feel bad for living in a smaller house than the next person. But is that the society that we want to live in, where we're taking away people's individuality and ability to express themselves and be who they want and aspire to what they want? Well, in the States, we have people generally have options, right? There are some schools, private schools generally do uniforms. So if they don't want that type of situation for their kids, or the kids don't want it, there's public schools that people can wear whatever they want. So having that option is there. In Japan, generally don't. It's all uniforms pretty much. Yeah. But again, that's the cultural difference that we see. Yeah. And Dixa said it's the urban culture. Regardless of race, city kids put more importance on brands. I think it's an American thing too. Americans put a lot on brands. And that can be an issue itself. Yeah, but I went to Queens public schools. Like I said, you saw some of that, right? People say you don't have the hottest JanSport. Ooh. But it wasn't like the biggest thing. Is there a hot JanSport though? Was there a hot JanSport? No. Well, there might have been, but it was basically at one point in time, everyone just got these JanSports, and you had to be cool, right? If you had your own backpack, that was looked at as not cool, which is kind of ironic because being unique was looked at as not cool. Being fitting in with everyone else was looked at as cool, and sometimes kids, I think, get that backwards. And so I understand that can be a problem. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Everyone has different experiences. I don't want to talk as if I know what other people are going through. I can just speak to my own experience, and that wasn't like the biggest thing in school. Like everyone has to have this, but maybe Queens public schools are different or can be different. I did speak to someone who went to school in the Bronx, and he said that if you didn't listen to hip hop, you got bullied. See, I never experienced that. Maybe I'm just lucky in my experience. To me, where I came from, it was like you had rock kids, you had hip hop kids, you had goth kids, you had people who didn't like any kind of music, you had all kinds of people, and you were embraced for who you were, and you could always find a crowd to fit in. He said he had to pretend to like rap, otherwise he thought he would get beat up. See, I never felt anywhere close to that where I was. Yeah, I didn't have that experience either. I know it. I mean,
I don't doubt that it's happened. I didn't have that experience. And, I'm probably similar to you in the matter that didn't really care that much about the trends and whatnot. It didn't affect my self-esteem or the way, whatever. I've never had a pair of Jordans, just, not try to single out that brand, but it just never bothered me. But some kids, it's an issue, not just about shoes, but about clothes, about the way you look, about what you can afford. And especially if everyone around you is, showing up in school with cars. My school, I know in New York is probably a little bit of a different thing because people get their licenses later. But, I got my driver's license when I was 15. And so my school had a parking lot for students. And so, some kids are showing up with the Beamer that mommy bought them or daddy bought them, and other kids
Right.
can't afford it. And so
But is the answer to say everyone has to show up to school in a Honda Civic?
But in clothing, it can take some of the edge off of some of that. Sure. Like everyone, look, you're all the same. No one's better than anyone here. You're here to learn. You're not here for a fashion show. I get that. I get that argument as well. I understand it.
Yeah, you're not here for a fashion show, but I don't think that means everyone has to be the same. But it's an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
And like you said, parents do usually have choice. If you want your kids going to a school like that, you're free to make that choice. Although sometimes those schools are more expensive, right? Like if they're Catholic schools or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But we are, I guess, going a little bit long here because we had a couple of other topics we wanted to get into. I wanted to go over our poll results from last week and then pivot to our police dog topic, which will be the poll question for this week. So let me pull this up because we asked about Florida's effort to allow concealed carry without a permit, right? Anyone who was legally allowed to possess the weapon would also be allowed to carry it concealed in public without any additional steps. No permit, nothing else. If you can have the weapon, you can conceal carry under this proposal, which we were told Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis was poised to sign.
Mm.
So poll question was, do you agree with Florida's effort to allow concealed carry without a permit? You might be encouraged by this, Jay. 81% no, 19% yes.
81% no. Okay, that is encouraging. Okay. Interesting. I've seen, you know what? I got a little bit late on putting up the poll this week, and I didn't get it up until today. And I only put it up a couple of hours ago on YouTube. And right before we started, I checked, and there was probably like 3 views on it. And I just pulled it up while you were reading it. There's 1,000 views, 1,000 views on it. And what is that? 20 thumbs up, 15 comments. So it must have caught fire real quickly. We got a couple of comments. One saying constitutional carry is a right, not a permission. So I'm assuming
constitutional carry is a right.
Not
I
a
don't
permission.
think this person was a lawyer who wrote that. What right is constitutional carry?
I'm assuming they agree with Florida's efforts.
I think their assessment.
Another one just said 100%, so they agree. And someone said, what I am against is the criminal concealing and carrying guns without permit. I mean, if that's the case, then you would be against what Florida.
You should be against it, except this would make it not criminal to do that.
Right. So, and then we got, of course, what do you mean allow? The amendment says will not be infringed. What part of that do you not understand?
Are you kidding me? So their argument, I mean, people are so brainwashed by this. They think that these rights are unlimited. You think freedom of speech is unlimited too? They might think that there's no constitutional limitation on any right, which is not the law. You can have these crazy far right people on the Supreme Court. They don't believe that. So now you're more extreme than the most extremist people on the court.
My question is always in that case when it's like absolutely should not be infringed. It's like, okay, so do you believe someone should be allowed to walk down the street with a loaded bazooka?
They do.
Like, I mean,
under that view, yes. Under that view, that's exactly what they're saying.
Should your neighbor have
absurd.
Should your neighbor have a nuclear bomb? Should they be allowed to? This is
right.
This is a weapon. This is a firearm. Like,
I don't know who got it in their head or who created this talking point that shall not be infringed means unlimited and unrestricted.
Right.
If you have a right, that means shall not be infringed. In other words, the right must be respected. But there's still a conversation to be had about what the limitations of that right are. It doesn't mean it's unlimited. It means that once we know the bounds of this right, we must stay within those bounds. We can't infringe the boundaries of the right that we're acknowledging, right? We're not saying that it means that it knows no bounds. That's not what it shall not be infringed means.
I think that's what a lot of people are seeing it as. So, I mean, I'm looking at comment after comment, and this is what I suspected was going to happen. Next one, yes, I do. I bet the mass shootings would go way down. I did completely disagree with that. I think we're going to end up seeing shootouts with people whose egos and fear is bigger than their common sense.
This isn't a video game where you can see who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. They aren't defined with a clean colored marker on the screen. I mean, if people are shooting at each other now and the police come or anyone comes, they're not going to be able to identify immediately who initiated it, who's the aggressor, who's good, who's bad. Now you get people shooting at each other and they all probably think they're on the right for whatever reason is in their head.
Absolutely. And now the cops are going to have to just basically shoot at everybody, because they don't know who is the bad guy or supposed.
We actually saw that happen. I think it was in a Walmart where you had someone who was shooting back, trying to stop an aggressor, apparently, from shooting. And then when the cops came, they didn't know who was who.
Yeah. So the majority of the comments here are all in support of what Florida is doing. Another one, the only problem we have with guns here is that there's not enough of them. Another, because criminals and murderers follow the laws, right? So.
Oh, my goodness. Criminals follow the laws, please. Do they not understand the availability of weapons? Do they not understand how commerce works, where these guns are coming from? Like, what are you even talking about? Why would you have to go to Virginia, no offense to you, Jay, or any state where it's legal, where it's easier to get a gun if the laws don't matter? Why would you have to go to a state where the laws are weaker if the laws don't matter?
Right. There were two comments that seem to push back. One says, as long as there is no criminal history, it's our right. So there at least seems to be looking at it from a thoughtful point of view. And another person, I'm guaranteeing they're a foreigner because they said, geez Louise, problems with firearms in the U.S., so let's loosen the law, facepalm. So.
Well, that person sounds the most sane out of all the comments you read for the most part.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's asinine to me. It's like someone gets into a car accident and doesn't wear a seatbelt, or someone wears a seatbelt and still dies. And then so you say, oh, I guess seatbelts don't work. Let's get rid of the seatbelt laws. Like, it doesn't make any kind of sense.
Well, speaking of seatbelts, when they were making the seatbelt laws, there were a lot of people on probably this side that were pushing back against seatbelt laws.
Right. Not to be crude, but some people tell me it's pointless to use condoms because they don't always work. Like, what kind of logic is this? This is a failure, a basic failure. Like, this is not sound logic here.
Well, it was the same thing we see with masking. Like, why wearing a mask? They don't always work or whatever. Like, if it's not 100%, it doesn't. There's no idea of lessening the incidences. There's no idea of that.
There's no idea of mitigation. Of trying to decrease availability, be more responsible. Right. It's like, if we can't pass a law that's going to be the silver bullet, no pun intended, to end all of gun violence, then it's pointless to even think about a law. I mean, to me, now you're just an anarchist, and it's kind of hard to have a serious conversation with someone who thinks that way.
Well, it's more, I think it's less anarchy and just more selfishness. I don't want to do it, so I'm going to be so opposed to whatever it is, no matter if it's makes sense or not. Like, I just don't want to do it. Like, that's what I think it is.
We should ask these commenters if they wore uniforms in school.
Probably not. But yeah, I expected that was how it was going to go, at least on the air. So I'm actually surprised at the result that you got.
But see, this is something that we're seeing. The comments sometimes are of this flavor, but the votes aren't. And so it might have to do with the platforms, because these votes that I'm getting are from Reddit, you're on YouTube. But I do think that you see a skew that is consistent with this, where sometimes the votes reflect a certain viewpoint, but they're not the ones who are speaking the most loudly on it.
Right.
And people talk about the silent majority. I actually think the silent majority is more sane, and the people on the fringes are loud and their voices are over amplified because they're speaking the loudest. And so it creates this impression that there are more extremists than there actually are. You look at the numbers, 80% say they disagree, but yet all the comments are contrary to that for the most part. I mean, the comments don't reflect the vote numbers.
Right. And I think we, like I said, we see this not just in what we're doing here, but even in society in general. People speak out more negative things, right? And so they're going to be the ones making the comments to saying something. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I know. I term that the negative Yelp review effect.
Yeah.
I think that's there. But I think whether it's positive or negative, I also feel like people on the fringes speak out more.
Yeah.
In either direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they've got something to fight for. They feel.
Yeah. They got a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah. Yes, Lixa, condoms.
What?
It's like, what? Condoms? Yes. But so yeah, so there it is. I thought we were gonna have any responses, but in the final hour, boom.
Yeah. But you also called it last week when you said that people were going to say that they agreed with it in the comments, right?
Yeah. I'm going to respond to several of these.
Okay.
I want to try to get, like I said, I'd like to hear more for them. Even if it's crazy, I want to hear more from you.
You're a masochist.
To some degree, I do like some of the smoke, I will end up in a debate back and forth with people on Twitter, and just sometimes let them hang themselves.
Just not the gun smoke.
Yeah, no, I remember a while back, a couple of years back, I had it with some right-wing guy comment on something, and I just kind of let him talk, and eventually he got to the point where his point kind of turned on itself to where he was basically saying that he would use his guns to shoot at the police. And then he realized what he said. And he's like, oh, you just tried to make me say that so I could get into trouble. Like, no, dude, that was all you.
Right. I remember that, right? He was saying that he's going to protect his Second Amendment right. And I think you told, well, who would come and take your guns away? He said the police would. And so he's going to shoot out with the police to keep his guns, right? Right.
And then he realized, wait a minute, I just said this publicly. And he eventually erased his comments. But like, look, here's the rope. Do what you're going to do with it. I just want to,
Yeah. Just want to clarify your position.
Yeah. So Carl in the comments says the reason why some people are in favor of gun rights is because they feel that a criminal will always get a gun no matter what. And if no one in a room with a criminal who has a grant starts killing everybody, wouldn't you appreciate if someone in the room legally had a gun to stop the criminal? That's an argument that is made very often. And to some degree, I can see it, but like, this is not the movies. Like, everyone's not Bruce Willis and Die Hard. They're going to be ready to throw down. Like,
right.
Most people are going to freeze up, or you're going to get yourself shot,
or you're going to shoot an innocent bystander.
Right. You're not trained like that. You know,
this isn't the wild, wild west. Also, it's a logical fallacy to say a criminal is going to get a gun regardless. That's not true. Again, this isn't an all or nothing approach. This is about mitigating the availability of guns on the street, guns that are available to criminals. If the criminals that are using guns in New York are all getting them from Virginia, and Virginia has weaker laws on guns, that should tell you something, that the laws are making a difference. No, it's not going to stop 100% of the people from getting them illegally. Nothing can do that, right? But it's about making the situation better. Right.
And so, like, this argument is also used in the one where they're pushing for teachers to carry guns in school, right? In case an active shooter shows up, Miss Smith is going to pull out her Glock and, like, do her action heroes type of thing. It's just not realistic. The teacher's she's not a soldier. He's not a soldier. That's not what they're there for. I'm sorry, I wouldn't do it. I'm not going to be going out in the halls hunting down a shooter. That's what the police are for.
And I would not feel more safe in my classroom.
And yeah,
I wouldn't feel more safe in my classroom if my teacher had a gun. I would not. No. Because then I'm thinking, oh, maybe the bully is going to get it from the teacher, get into her desk and steal it or whatever. Like, now there's just a loaded gun around. Like, that doesn't make me feel safer.
Right. Or the teacher's going to have a bad day, or they're going to be
right.
They're going to be in an ego confrontation with an out of control student, and now they're going to pull their gun because they feel some kind of a way. Even the police don't rush immediately in, guns ablazing. They sit back and try to make a strategic way to get in so they don't get shot or so other people don't get shot. Like, it's just not realistic to say that we're going to have teachers packing and that's going to shut stuff down. It's just not. So.
No. It's, it sounds good, but it's a very romanticized view of how the world actually works.
I think it's movie logic. I think we have, and I know some studies say it's not true, but I think we've fallen victim to like this indoctrination of movie logic in a lot of cases, right? Where, someone's got a gun, even if they're not a military trained, they're not combat trained or whatever, and they somehow subdue the bad guy, right? Or the police violate somebody's rights, yet they're still the hero at the end of the movie. Like, no, that's not how reality is supposed to work. Police violating rights is wrong, no matter if they catch the guy or not. The somebody having a gun is not going to be there to be like, I don't know, like I said, Bruce Willis in Die Hard. It's just it's not reality.
What was that? Hammurabi's code, the eye for the eye, fight fire with fire. I mean, I thought we were more evolved, or should be more evolved as a society than that, right? Is you don't devolve by turning yourself into what they are.
Right. And listen,
we don't want people with guns. The answer isn't to have more people shooting at each other. It's less.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't as bad as that, but what we think of when we think of the Old West, right? The OK Corral, or when everybody was walking around with guns and there might be a shootout in a saloon somewhere. Right. We don't want to go back to that. But listen, I will concede that I understand, like, look, if you're in that fearful state that you think that someone's coming around with a gun, you might want personal protection just in case. I can understand that feeling. I do, but it's just not realistic to think that you're that guy or that girl that's going to go head up with somebody who's really intent on doing harm with a loaded weapon. You might get some shots off. More than likely, you're going to get hurt as well. Right.
And now there are just more guns floating around that are also available to criminals. I mean, people act like criminals are like this separate class of person, like a robot police dog we're going to talk about. Like, there's a regular person and then there's a criminal. Like, no, they're people. We're all people. There are people who commit criminal acts, but we're all just people, right? And so if you have more guns floating around, now there are more guns available for people to use in crimes as well. And now they become criminals. So it's not like a separate class of being, right? We're all people, and these are all guns, and sometimes they're used in crimes. And so do we want to make it easier for people to get them who shouldn't have them and shouldn't be using them? Right. No. And so when we have laws, we're not saying that we want to make it so that law-abiding people who are following the laws, who deserve to have the guns, shouldn't have them. That's not what the laws are designed to do. They're designed to make sure that people can get them who should get them, who can prove that they deserve to have them for whatever reason they need to have them. That's a way to keep it, again, it's not foolproof. It's not 100%, but it's a way to mitigate it so that criminals have a harder time getting them, because they are originating from lawful sources. They're not just being pulled out of thin air.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's not really like illegal gun manufacturing plants somewhere. Like, these are, like you said, made by legitimate companies, and they make their way into the wrong hands. And that's how it happens. And, we're not talking about a total ban on all guns nationwide. We're talking about putting in some common sense barriers or common sense sign goalposts that have to be passed in order for people to get them that can handle that responsibility of carrying something that's so deadly. And obviously, we're failing in that regard. We're having kids in elementary schools getting slaughtered in school. We're obviously not mature enough to handle the responsibility at the level that we think that we are, and we need to adjust to that. We need to realize that.
Right. And I really do think it's foolish if you're going to sit here and tell me the answer to school shootings is to arm more people in schools. Let's arm the teachers and all the kids, and that's going to solve school. That's ridiculous. That's not even a serious thing to say to me.
I mean, how far are we from that argument to say, okay, look, there's school shooters coming in. I'm sending my kid to school with a loaded 9.
I feel like we're there already. Isn't that basically what people are saying? The answer is to have more guns floating around. So give everyone a gun, and then you'll have gun violence go down. That's their argument. It's not a serious argument, but it's the one they're making.
Because here's the thing: is like they're thinking like, okay, someone's going to walk in and think, okay, well, maybe everyone in here has a gun, so I'm not going to do it. If you're already that crazy to do it, you're going in to do it anyway, especially if you're going in to do things like suicide by cop, or you know that you're not going to make it alive. Your goal is just to take out as many people as possible. It doesn't matter if there's guns or not. That's not going to do it. Let's get it out of the hands of people who are having issues, who are that evil, who are that crazy. Let's try to mitigate the situation that way. So it's, and we've been trying it this way for a while. Let's try it the other way. We've been talking about
I've said this too. There is no one solution. There's no one approach that's going to do it. It's an all of the above approach. And so we do need to focus on the availability of guns that we don't want out there, that we don't want bad people with bad intentions getting. That's one aspect of it. That's not the only aspect of it. There are other factors at play too. And so it's foolish to assume that if you hyper focus just on guns and gun restrictions, that you're going to solve the problem. No, because you're still going to have people out there who are of a certain mind state, maybe of a certain emotional state, certain mentality, who's still going to do bad things. And in some cases, yes, they still are going to get their hands on guns if they want to, despite the laws. Like, we're not saying the law is going to solve everything, but we're saying that that's one factor that can be used to mitigate the availability of these guns. And we have to look at these other factors too. Like, we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time here.
Yeah, and we have to also look at a bigger picture of it and say, okay, look, Columbine was so far out of the norm that it really freaked out the nation. But now we're having that like almost every week. What has changed? Didn't have school shootings when we went to school, but now this is a normal thing. Kids have active shooter drills. What has changed? We need to look at that and think, what are we doing here? People are worried about kids not going to school because of COVID, and they're worried about, oh, it's going to stunt their development. What are you doing to kids when they have to go to school and train and have active shooter drills to worry about that they're going to get slaughtered in school? You're less worried about that? That doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, and again, we're not even to the point, and we might need to discuss the point of talking about total gun ban, but no one's talking about that. If we're talking about slaughtering children and that we care about children, okay, should people discuss that? That might be something they should, but no one's even talking about it. We're saying, hey, look, we respecting that we have the right to bear arms. We all have the right to bear arms. Let's do it responsibly so that we're not having kids being slaughtered in schools.
It angers me that that's happening. Kids are being slaughtered in schools and we can't do anything about it.
Right.
Yeah. Like you said, we have a Second Amendment. We agree. There's a Second Amendment. You have a right to bear arms. That doesn't end the discussion. There is a discussion to be had about what we do about these guns and this gun violence. And we can't seem to get anything done.
Right.
But shout out to New York for passing the state of origin law. Hopefully that will shine some more light on this.
There was just a mass shooting yesterday, the bank. Yeah.
More information is better. More transparency is better. Hopefully it leads to more accountability, but that's going to be on us, the people, to put the necessary pressure on to make it happen. But
absolutely.
Let's wrap up with this discussion on Digidogs.
Are they the answer? Are they the answer to this situation?
Are they the answer? Robotic, really, dogs that are being used by the NYPD to fight crime.
Right. Now, I saw the news article, and apparently what it is that I don't know if everyone has seen the Boston Dynamics, that robot dog that people are like, they're showing people kicking it and pushing it down, it gets back up and whatnot. So the NYPD just bought one, and it was like, what was it, $738,000 for one. So Mayor Adams is being
For two units.
2 units. So Mayor Adams is being criticized for spending that kind of money amongst budget cuts. Like, when people could
Right.
be, you know, why are they getting cuts when people need these funds and you're buying robot dogs?
Right. So the mayor has proposed another round of budget cuts to city agencies. And he also announced a new labor contract for the NYPD's main union. But the NYPD went and spent $738,000 of its forfeiture money on 2 of these robotic dogs. Now, forfeiture money is a fund that they have when they recover assets from alleged criminals, right? Someone's allegedly committing a crime, is arrested, has money on them. They believe that the money was perhaps stolen or, obtained illegally through this crime. It goes into a special fund, this forfeiture fund, which can then be used to buy things like robot dogs. I mean, there is controversy now over whether it's an appropriate use of the money or the best use of the money amidst these budget cuts that we're seeing, right? So
Right.
agencies are being cut. Is the best use of this money from this fund on these fancy dog robots,
Right.
or should we be putting it to better use?
And it's like you said 2 of them, right?
2 of them.
I mean, with that money, I'm sure they could, bolster services or bolster police officers themselves or what have you. But
They're fighting for their jobs. I mean, I know some police officers now, and they're very concerned about not having a contract. I mean,
yeah, so I don't think.
how many jobs are going to be lost over this?
I think this is just a toy. This is more part of it. I mean, these were developed kind of for military use. I don't think any police department should have any military weapons, but I think they were developed in that regard. And just 2 of them, like that money could have been in better use somewhere else. And what are they going to do with it? And I understand, I think you mentioned something about, maybe I'm not seeing it, but I know they have application in like bomb defusal type of situations, but
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's wasteful spending.
And Mayor Adams is leaning on that technological argument. He's saying that this is the age of technology, right? Technology.
Former cop though, like he's gonna be like,
cop, but he's also he's framing this as he's a computer geek. That's what he says. He's like, I'm a computer geek. I'm intrigued by all this new emerging technology. This is cutting edge, and we want to be on top of it here in New York.
I get that part, but that's $735,000 to geek out of public funds for geeking out. Even though technically, I guess if it's seizure funds, it's not technically budget funds, but they could still apply that to
exactly. It's funding that's there, and amidst these budget cuts, how should this funding be used?
Right.
Here, for those watching the video, here's a share screen. Should be coming up. That's what the dog looks like. You see that behind Mayor Adams there?
Yep, that guy right there. Now, I don't think we're that far off from these robo things to be patrolling our streets. I think in certain parts in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, they already have not necessarily these things, but some other robo patrols that have cameras and whatnot on them. So I think
right. And I found it interesting that some civil rights groups were opposed to this. And I think they had concerns about surveillance. But I also wondered if the fact that it's shaped like a dog plays a role in any way. Does that make it psychologically more problematic?
Well, I mean, depending on what you equip it with, it could be, I mean, think about, I don't know, what's the equivalent? Like them droids in RoboCop hunting people down on the streets? Like,
but I'm also thinking about, maybe this is a reach, but I'm thinking about the potential racial implications of dogs in policing.
What do you mean?
Well, for example, like the way we were pulled over by the cops in Florida, and they brought the dogs to come harass us. And I don't know if you look back, doesn't it also go back to trying to catch runaway slaves using dogs? I mean, I think that's how they were kind of were first brought into the police department.
Yeah, I think that was one of the first uses of them. I don't know if it.
Just wondering if it's rubbing people the wrong way. The fact that not just that it's a robot, but it's a robot dog. Like if that's sending a certain psychological message to people.
I don't know. It's possible. I hadn't thought of it in that regard. But I'm kind of been more looking at it as it was a military robot. But
right. You know, and it's not to say that dogs can't, or shouldn't be used in policing, but they can serve their role. Like they can be trained very well to sniff out drugs and certain things, but I think that there may be a concern there. Yeah.
And I think this is a smaller version of some of the bigger ones, and I forget what they call them. And they used to carry also supplies and stuff, because you see the way the back is flat. I don't know about this model specifically, but some of the other ones, since the back is flat, they can strap on supplies and it can accompany soldiers into the field. This is a little bit more of an urban type of thing, but it's just I don't think it's the best use of money right now.
Yeah. There's also technology mentioned in this article that was published by City and State talking about the star case system. It would allow police to shoot a GPS tracking tag at fleeing vehicles via handheld or vehicle mounted launcher, which in theory would obviate the need for a high-speed chase. But of course, you might raise some surveillance concerns there also if they can just shoot a GPS tracker on your car.
If they could do that at anyone, that's, well, I can see the implications. I can see the benefits of that. I can see the benefits of that. But they have to see the benefits
of it, but it would need to be checked, I would think, so that it's not abused.
Right.
We were talking earlier about China potentially spying on us with TikTok.
Right.
If that's your concern, I think you should also be concerned about the government having the easy ability to just shoot a GPS tracker at your car. You definitely would want checks in place to make sure that this was only happening when warranted.
And I mean, it's the same with discharging tasers and weapons. Like if we're failing in that regard, like I think, this doesn't bode well. Doesn't instill confidence that they can do something else to track them.
And also, how long would it last? I mean,
battery runs out.
But should that be part of the law? Maybe. I mean, some kind of limitation on that. What if someone is, I don't know, speeding and for whatever reason isn't cooperating with the cop, and who knows why? Maybe they're freaking out because they're racing to the hospital, but someone pregnant in the car. There could be a million different reasons. But all right, the cop is trying to stop them and can't. The person's not stopping voluntarily, so the cop shoots a GPS tracker on their car. Understood. But how long now should that tracker be on that person's car? I mean, for the rest of their life, should this person be tracked by the police because they didn't pull over that one time?
I would imagine that the tracker would stay on the car until the police come there and get them. So they follow the signal to where it's at, and they come and get the guy, and they retrieve their tracker. And
take your tracker and your robot dog with you.
Oh, yeah. So.
Well, I think these are the checks that need to be in place, and we need to be looking at this because this is nuance, right? And I think we fundamentally believe that usually it's not a matter of all or nothing, one way or the other. Usually the answer is somewhere in the middle. These technologies can be useful, but they can also become out of control, right? Abused, problematic, troublesome. So we need to find that balance and figure out how do we use these things in a way that doesn't start infringing on people's rights.
Yeah. And do it before we're in too deep.
Right.
We've had kind of similar discussions in that regard as far as surveillance and stuff when the Patriot Act came out.
Absolutely. And also when people were standing on the corner in Brooklyn in army fatigues and holding machine guns.
Right.
That didn't make me feel safer. Some people said that they felt safer seeing that. I didn't. And I remember one time I was in college, I went to school in downtown Brooklyn. There was a soldier standing on the corner of the street in downtown Brooklyn, holding a machine gun in the air, and he was bending down, tying his shoe, the gun just like pointing out at maybe like a 45-degree angle, half in the air, half just to randomly in the direction of the street. I didn't feel safe. I thought, God forbid, he's tying his shoe. What if he somehow discharges that weapon into innocent bystanders? So, you know what I mean? Like I don't think that that's a good look. Now, I understand sometimes you need maybe increased presence or activity depending on the situation. It's not all or nothing.
I remember that.
I'm very cautious about that.
That was that post 9/11 immediate zone. I remember even in Valley Stream going to for a while there, we'd go to the train station in Valley Stream, and there'd be an armed officer there with an M16 rifle just standing there. And I could see how that would really make a lot of people uncomfortable. I grew up on military bases, so I'm just used to seeing, because that would be the military walking around. So it didn't bother me as much, but I saw how uncomfortable that would be in the public. It's not a military base. This is not what people are supposed to be walking.
They start having these thoughts like, what if someone is then fighting with that soldier or officer, whoever it is, for whatever reason, right? And now they feel the need to start firing their machine gun. Do I want to be in a situation where machine gun bolts are flying everywhere, even if the guy is firing it for good reason, or if he thinks it's good reason in his mind? Maybe he really is in danger, but he's also putting everyone else in danger. Did that situation even have to be created in the first place?
Right. Absolutely. So I think that's, so I think we strayed a little bit from the robot dogs, but I think it's kind of a similar point.
I think this is all related. I mean, even getting back to that TikTok discussion, right, about technology and our concerns with it, and even potential spying or too much surveillance being used, right? It's like with great power comes great responsibility, right? We got all this awesome technology that's out there, but we need to use it in a responsible way.
Yeah. Are we up to that challenge as a people? So they put that up as the poll. You got the poll.
So let's make that the poll question of the week. We get the money right. I believe it was 738,000. Right, that's what we saw. Yeah. So the poll question of the week is: do you agree that $738,000 should be spent by the NYPD on 2 robotic police dogs?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. But we'll see. But we did go a little bit long again today, this time. But it was a robust conversation.
Yes. And I thank everyone for joining us. As always, we always try to have interesting conversations about what's going on that week.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hopefully, I've seen the DC cops, the DC RoboCops, and they have them in the, like I said, in some places in California too, they've had them. Whereas in Japan, they don't have robot cops, but they had, robot servers in restaurants. No, you know what? They did have some robot patrols in the airport in Tokyo. I saw a few of those.
Yeah, I do get nervous sometimes with those because you think that they might not be properly programmed. Like, obviously, the basic programming is down. Maybe it could do its job generally speaking, but it might not be equipped to handle every situation. And then you think you're going to find yourself in a situation where it doesn't know what to do. Like, it's now accusing you of doing something wrong, even though you're not, because it misread the situation somehow.
Right. It's
lacking that human element, that human touch that you need.
Yeah. So
is that the bottom line? Be careful with technology.
I think it is.
Technology is awesome, but we need to keep it in check as well.
Right. Our and then there's a quote, and I'm at a loss right now about humanity and technology outpacing our humanity. We have to be aware of that. But I think at the main point at this point, even technologies is out there, but our humanity needs to get back in check and get back online. We're having
right
a lot of issues in that regard as well. So
yeah, there you go. I mean, that would seem to decrease the violence if humanity makes it back.
Absolutely.
So
definitely appreciate everybody joining and quite a lively chat, lively comments from the canine constituency as well. Definitely check us out on YouTube at Nuance Show. If you're not subscribed, go there and subscribe. Hit up Instagram as well, and then you can lock in to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, and actually now on YouTube as well. They have their YouTube podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all
YouTube podcasts. I did check that out. What is different about YouTube podcasts as compared to regular videos? Because it just seemed like still the video content playing in the playlist.
I don't know, but I went ahead and created it to add to it. And I think it might be there might be an RSS feed for it, which is how podcasts are distributed, whereas you didn't have RSS feeds before. That's the only thing. I'm not even sure if they have one, but that would be the only difference, I think. But also, they're creating their YouTube podcast platform type of thing, like Spotify has theirs and all this and that. So there's a special section supposedly where podcasts get highlighted or get said, okay, these are podcasts, but they still just look like regular YouTube stuff. So,
right. Well, you have a plethora of ways to find us. So we thank you however you do find us. We always appreciate the viewership, listenership, and the comments, even the crazier ones. Thank you for all the engagement, everyone. As always, we've got work to do, and we'll catch you next week.